I would ask you to picture this. You're standing in your own bathroom holding one of 3 toothbrushes in front of you, and you have absolutely no idea what to do with it or what it's used for, and worse, you don't even remember what it's called. Time stands very still, and there's just this huge empty gaping hole of nothingness, and you're not sure what's happening, you're not sure what's missing, and you're not sure if things will ever be normal again. This is Alzheimer's. Imagine this: you park your car in your local car park in your local town. You have your list of to-dos written down, and more importantly, you have it in your hand and not left on the kitchen table, and all is okay. Then in the space of a few moments, you get a text message. A friend calls you, and someone says hello who you don't instantly recognize. And in those few short moments, you get confused, disorientated, and overwhelmed. Now you're wondering, where are you? Cashel, Clonmel, or Thurles? All that should be familiar becomes frighteningly unfamiliar, and you become very scared. This is Alzheimer's. Later, you go to do some grocery shopping, and someone you know turns their back on you out of embarrassment or possibly fear. So you go home saddened, confused, wondering if it would just be easier to sit inside your front door and give up. This is Alzheimer's. This is my story. I first began to realize there was something very wrong when I became aware that my sons were regularly finishing my sentences, filling in words as I mimed or gestured for simple objects such as hoover or mop or keys. I found myself asking them the same questions over and over again. What day do you have a hurling match? What time do I need to collect you? What subjects are you doing in school today? And I was surprised to be met with frustration and confusion as they answered me for the umpteenth time. I was constantly wondering why I couldn't seem to hold on to simple details or facts. But at the age of 52, a busy single mom of 2 sons, Alzheimer's was the furthest thing from my mind. Although I was officially diagnosed with this life-changing condition on January the 23rd, 2014, I had been vaguely aware of issues with my memory for years. In my early 40s, I had spoken to my GP, who explained that the brain is a muscle, and that muscle needs to be used and kept active. So I started puzzles, learned cross-stitch, and challenged my brain in new and different ways. Life went on and got very busy. I studied and qualified as a life coach. My marriage failed. I was a lone parent of 2 active teenagers. My mom had died the same year as my marriage ended after a long and tough struggle with cancer. And finances, or lack of, were always nipping at my heels. After my dad was diagnosed with vascular dementia, I found some of his behaviours strange and confusing and didn't really know how to respond. So I signed up for a family carers course to learn a bit about dementia. But as the course went on, I realised to my horror that I could identify with some of the warning signs myself and actually was using some of the suggested strategies on a daily basis and had been doing so for a number of years. I spoke to the facilitators, and although they were surprised, they suggested I speak to my GP. At the time, I wimped out. I felt I couldn't cope with such a diagnosis. I had enough to deal with and wasn't sure I could handle this as well. I had to be there for the guys as they were going through some tough stuff of their own. But as time went on, I couldn't ignore the fact that ordinary, everyday things other people my age took for granted were becoming a challenge for me. and if there was anything at all that I could do to stay well for longer, then I just needed to do it. The boys still needed a mum. I found myself doing the same things repeatedly. If I drove to my local town, I would always go for the same car park and hoped the same space was free. Otherwise, I could have trouble finding my car. I was losing more and more words. I would fill the sink and forget about it so it overflowed, and regularly burnt all kinds of food. Things had to be in their place, or I became frustrated and sometimes overwhelmed. I would forget what I had done the day before, and sometimes in the middle of a conversation I would stall, go completely blank, not have an idea of what I was speaking about. I spoke to my own GP, who knew me well, and he was surprised but agreed to do the mini memory test. I failed miserably, and so the difficult journey began. Finally, the day arrived for my diagnosis. I was brought into a small room with 5 people and told that I had mild cognitive impairment. That didn't sound so bad, and at least the dreaded A word hadn't been mentioned. It wasn't until I was in the car park heading back to my car that I met the nurse who had first assessed me, and she apologised for not being with me for the diagnosis. I told her not to worry, I was fine, and again she apologised. And in that moment I realised that either I hadn't heard something or something hadn't been said. And so I asked straight out, "Are you saying I have Alzheimer's?" And the answer was yes. In that moment, my world as I knew it shattered. I burst into tears. How could this be happening? How was I going to manage? How was I going to tell the guys their mum was slowly going to disappear? And that one day, when next year, the year after, 5 years, I wouldn't know them. And they were still in school and so young. As I drove to pick up Andrew that day, all I could think about was how I had 8 to 12 years before I would begin to disappear, to unravel, to cease being Kathy. My eldest son would be out of college, probably in a relationship, possibly married, and Matt would be 25. I was not at all prepared, therefore, when a few weeks later I asked what the worst-case scenario could be for me. And I was told that I might not recognise my own sons within 3 years, as I had some other underlying medical issues, and that in all likelihood I had had Alzheimer's from some years already. Alzheimer's, the silent thief, had stolen even more of my precious time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt as if my life had come crashing down. All I could think about were my sons. Although young men, they were still so young to deal with a mum. Gradually disappearing, becoming a ghost and haunting their lives. My dream had always been to go to college as soon as the guys had finished school. I was going to be very careful and not go to the same college as them. I wanted to get a degree, start earning, financially provide for my future, travel and do things I had only ever dreamed about. I was a qualified life coach, but wanted to work more closely with people who were struggling with life. That was the first dream that Alzheimer's, the thief, stole from me. I decided that day that I was not going to go down without a fight. No professional, no doctor can tell me how many days I have left on this earth. Only God knows. When I finally told my sons, they took the news hard. While Matt was upset, at first he thought I would be like Grandad, and so had many years before the condition would manifest. Andrew took it badly. He and I had taken on the world together, and he was very, very angry. One of the toughest moments for me was when I stood outside his door one day and heard him say to someone, if I get into college, will Mum recognise me on my graduation day? For years I have tried to be there for them, and suddenly I am going to be the cause of the greatest sadness and heartache in their lives. Since then, we have talked through everything, even my funeral arrangements, and how I desperately don't want them to put their lives on hold to take care of me. My life has changed. My work and volunteering is gone, and I sorely miss that. But I can either sit down and feel sorry for myself and be a royal pain in the ass for those around me, or find something else to do. That choice is mine. Right now, what keeps me going is being a mom and doing advocacy work. I am a member, and this is a mouthful, of the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland's Irish Dementia Working Group. I'm taking part in research projects and working to create awareness of this condition in order to help others and also break the stigma attached to dementia. My sons and I made that video about living with the condition, which has touched people all over the world, and we're very proud to be making a difference. Now that I've spoken out about my condition more and more, people are comfortable around me and more open to hearing that I am still Kathy, I am still me. What has been difficult to take is the increasing isolation. Now that the guys are spreading their rings and off living their lives, I find I'm faced with what I can only describe as nothingness. My ability to read is disappearing as I forget what I read the page before. I lose the plot of movies, and because I'm not supported to work, I am finding it increasingly difficult to keep a car going, which gives me the freedom to share both my story and information around the country. To stay socially active, which is one of the 4 strategies for staying well. There are only so many times you can clean the house or walk the dogs in any given day. There are many parts of my mind that are still active. So much I would like to do, so much I could do, both for myself and others. And yet, I find myself neither young nor old, neither totally useful or totally useless. And that is where you find a single mom with dementia under the age of 60. Sometimes I feel I want to just run away, but to where? Once you receive your diagnosis in this country, you are pretty much set adrift, and that very much needs to change. My advice to anyone newly diagnosed is to think. Although you very much do need to plan for the future, try not to relinquish too much control too early, to avoid falling into a dark place, into the nothingness, into having no purpose. Most importantly, as soon as you have any concerns, contact your doctor. Don't worry on your own. For me, although it was devastating, it was also a great relief to know there was a reason for why I was doing certain things. And also that there are things within my control that I can do to stay as well as possible for as long as possible. A Mediterranean diet helps exercise, challenging the mind. For me, my faith and prayer is hugely important. But what is vital is to keep socializing. Don't back away from it. It's extremely important if you don't want to fall into isolation and possibly depression. When I sit and think about my future, it's very scary. But I have a strong faith. My sister, who is my best friend, incredible friends, both from before diagnosis and lots of new ones, and 2 sons who I am very proud of. This condition is not who I have become. It's not who I am. I know hardships and tough times are coming, such as not being able to drive, and the fact that I may not see my sons graduate or proudly watch them get married. But each moment I have a choice, and I choose to be the best that I can today. I laugh, I cry, I feel sad, I get angry. I can sink into that black hole, but I have learned that if I work hard at it, it will pass, and I try to concentrate on the here and the now. I choose to live. If I keep focusing on the ugly bits coming down the line, I'll miss what is important for me today. I will not let this disease dictate to me a moment sooner than it absolutely has to. A few days after I was diagnosed, I vowed that we would laugh every single day and that I would not sweat the small stuff. So when I can't figure out how to empty the Hoover or get distracted and forget dinner, I give myself a break instead of getting angry and frustrated. My life has changed, but it still has meaning and purpose, and I can still love and laugh and even enjoy a glass of wine. I'm still Kathy, maybe a little changed, but I'm still me. Many people have looked at me and said, "You don't look like someone who has dementia." But I would ask anyone, what does dementia look like? I'm here today to ask you, all of you, if you know someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, or someone caring for someone with the condition, please don't turn away. Please don't avoid them. If you know someone has Alzheimer's, don't stop calling around. Even if they struggle to recognize you at first, invite them out for a drink or a meal if they are able, or call in for a coffee. We might be forgetful or get lost sometimes, but that's okay. We are still the same person inside, and by you learning a little, you can help us a lot. You don't need to fear people with dementia or feel embarrassed. You don't have to know what to say. There is nothing you can say to change our reality. But your company, knowing you are there, it means the world. It's a lifeline. I'm asking you today to forget the stigma, but not to forget that people with dementia are still moms and dads, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, just like all of you. I may not remember what we spoke about or where we met, but I will remember how I felt when I was with you. Shunned, shamed, judged, ignored, or respected, safe, cared for, and loved. That choice is yours. Thank you.